Good afternoon, everyone. This is another one of our nice informal videos that we've been making. And we have a friend with us today, our Vice President of Administrative Services. I like to also call her my CFO. I don't know if that's her official title, but that's certainly what Amy does a wonderful job for the college. And Amy, as we've navigated this complex situation with COVID, and we've had to take everything from a face-to-face to a virtual, it's had a tremendous impact on our financial side in lots of different ways. It's also had a tremendous impact on the amount of work that you all have to do, because now all of a sudden you have a number of new responsibilities that didn't exist just 2 or 3 weeks ago. We have this CARES Act, as you know, that is going to require very, very careful tracking. We're going to be offering student grants to help those students with expenditures related to living expenses and other academic expenses. There's a lot of tracking there, and then a good portion of that money can also be used for problems with our operations. But I'm going to stop talking. Tell us kind of how you're navigating, and you can share some of the reports that you've been working on. I know with your composite financial index, but anything you want to talk about in terms of finances with the college.
All right. I guess really the Coronavirus Act really started about mid-March when we suspended classes for 2 weeks so we could really offer those classes online. Congress enacted the Families First Coronavirus Act, and that really had some requirements of it for governmental agencies, which we're considered a part of. And in that act, employers were required to provide 80 hours of leave for their employees if they met certain criteria. And then
sorry to interrupt, but I think we actually launched that before we even had that passed. Isn't that correct?
Right. We seen the initial legislation, so we modeled the SCC policy really towards that legislation. So we were probably one of the first implementers of those requirements in that act. The college also took the initiative of we're trying to get employees off-site, for the protection of the employees and the students. And there's some jobs that you have to do on-site. The majority of their work is on-site. So at the direction of Dr. Illich, we moved forward with a temporary leave and reduction hours, where we're giving employees a full-time employee up to 2 weeks of leave with pay in the event that their hours are reduced due to this crisis. So that was the first act that was passed by Congress. The second act is referred to the CARES Act, and there's some requirements on there. There's some funding within the there's funding for higher education institutes. And that's based upon a formula. I don't have it in front of me, but SCC's allocation is about $4.2 million. 50% of that has to go directly to the students in the form of financial aid, whether it be food, lodge, or housing, whatever the case may be. And Mike Pegram and his student services staff and financial aid have done a remarkable job of really implementing all this and tracking it. There's requirements in the CARES Act that requires SCC to submit reports every 30 days of how we're spending the money. So it's really imperative that we have this tracking mechanism. So if people have questions over monies available, it's confusing. There's different pots of money. So I would encourage you to call me and let me know if you have questions.
Yeah, one of the things, Amy, that I think is super important is we need to all communicate. While I do think the government they're going to be probably somewhat flexible. We are going to be subject to audits, and it's going to be super important. We want to get this money to the students in a very expedient fashion, but we want to make sure. So it is important that everybody reaches out to your area for assistance. And I think you and all of your staff have done an amazing job of helping us kind of be leaders in helping our students. You've been involved in the emergency fund that we set up for students that kind of flows through our foundation. What you've got some folks, payroll, purchasing, some of them kind of have to be here at some point. I know there's a lot of rotating going on to keep everyone safe, but what are some of the areas that are challenging? There, you may have to have a couple of folks come in and be on site.
Right. You know, the payroll is probably the critical area, is the critical department of the college. You know, it's imperative we get paychecks out to people. That's vitally important, the utmost importance. They've done a remarkable job of working with confidential information at home as much as they can, but there are some requirements. You know, we have some pretty lengthy payroll reports in the 400-page length of the report that has to be printed and reconciled. So some of those job duties are being done on site on a limited basis, but they've done a remarkable job. Other areas of the college that I'm responsible is daycare. Daycare is still open. Quota on the children, full occupancy is about 80 kids. We're down to about 15 kids. We've implemented some new policies in childcare that really says how you can put your childcare on hold, and basically we'll quit charging you during this coronavirus. So that's, a lot of people have taken advantage of that, and I've heard it's really a great thing that SCC is doing. Other areas of the college, shipping and receiving, we're still getting shipments in of equipment. It's getting towards the end of the fiscal year, so we need to make sure we're purchasing equipment. It's getting here, it's getting tagged. Bookstore still has orders for summer courses. Those need to be shipped out. So we're still busy, and there is still activity within the college, even though there's limited number of people.
Amy, one of the things that I've been talking about I had a couple of webinars today, and we're starting to work toward, and obviously, you know, you go to the administrative team meetings, and the natural reaction in a situation like this is to be cautious, and but I think it's super important to also be mindful of the future. And it's pretty obvious that there's going to be tremendous opportunities for the community college to help those, for example, that are unemployed. They're going to need to be retrained. There's going to be potentially a shift in some of the sectors of higher education, and maybe there's individuals that really want that 4-year degree, but maybe the parents or the person themselves is looking at their investment accounts, and they're recognizing they're going to have to figure that out in a different way. So maybe they're changing their approach, and now they're going to go 2 years at SCC and then 2 years at the university. Or maybe there was folks that weren't sure, and they now see wonderful careers in health sciences. They want to pursue almost like a pandemic-proof career, and many of our career and technical programs are that way. And so one of the things that you and I've talked about is, while we need to be mindful of our financial situation, we also need to be thinking about the future and investing in ourselves so that we can help turn these potential opportunities into realities for those that really need it. So I do think we're going to see a shift in sector, and I think it's super important. And you've done a wonderful job working with me over the last, I guess I've been here almost 6 years, 5.5 years. And I think it's fair to say I've pushed you a little bit, and we've done a tremendous amount of investment, and I only see that continuing. This COVID hit us right as we were been transforming, opening up new buildings, and I think the timing couldn't be better with for example, the health science building, or the diesel technology, the Creek Carrier Diesel Technology and Welding Center of Milford. There is not a better time, more important time for investing in transportation, investing in health sciences. Those are just two examples. What are your thoughts on the need to be thinking about the future while managing the current situation?
You know, I think the coronavirus has really probably opened some other doors for people. You know, as people get if people get laid off, they're really evaluating their current situation. Is it the time to go back to college to get their STEM degree? You know, you can get through a STEM program in 18 months, 2 years, and some of those occupations pay very well. So I think a lot of people will be looking at that. SCC has to be in a position that we can provide those opportunities for those people. So we've got to be staffed, we've got to have equipment, we've got to be ready for an influx of people.
Yeah, and I know one of the things you and I are going to be working on with your folks is kind of an important, we've started talking about it, but we're going to make sure that we have at a very high level a kind of a, while we have very careful planning processes, we talked about a financial sort of overall, almost a risk assessment / financial plan to think about putting all of our pieces together, like what's our revenue bond structures look like, how many more might we try to go after, what about other types of financings, pay-as-you-go projects, revenue streams, which ones, flexibility in those revenue streams, what legislation is required to create that. So there's a lot of things that I think in some ways this will kind of push us to move sooner rather than later on getting sort of a long-term trajectory put in front of our boards so they kind of know what we're thinking. Anything else you want to add before we wrap this up about, is there any messaging you want to give to your folks? You guys have done a remarkable job. I do want to thank you and all of your folks. I think your area in particular has, everybody during this time is really, there's a lot of worrying going on about paychecks and, they going to have enough work to do. And I think we've really done a lot of great things to put people at ease. So I do appreciate that. And hopefully you can let everyone in your area know we're all very appreciative. You guys have done such a great job of getting folks to understand that we're going to do everything possible to keep folks busy and to, because we've got to be thinking about the future. And anything to add to that?
No, I guess I would just like to thank you for your leadership during this time.
You're just saying that because you're being recorded, Amy. Come on.
You've kept us focused. You've kept us looking at the big picture, not the knee-jerk reaction that, is easily to do in these circumstances. And we're thinking about the future. And I think you'll see the results in the college in both, facilities, enrollment, and other areas also.
Well, and we had mentioned earlier before, did you want to, we've got a couple of minutes, I think, if you would like, Amy, did you want to share your screen? This is one of the challenging things Amy and our folks had to work with. Some of the agencies, the Higher Learning Commission, did not change their deadlines on very important financial reports. And this is one of the more important reports we have to send into the Higher Learning Commission. It's called it's actually called something different, but I refer to it as a composite financial index report. It's an institutional update, but we have to prove to our accrediting body every year that we're in a good financial position. So just give us a very, very high level overview of what this report is all about and how does it reflect our.
Right, this is just a huge snapshot of the operations of the college for fiscal year ending June 30th, 2019. As you can see, there's a lot of different ratios and performance measures in this that this report summarizes. You have the primary reserve ratio, and you can just see some notes and net operating revenue ratios. And all these ratios are really combined at the end for a composite financial index ratio. And anything over, this is really the health of the financial health of the college. Anything over a 3.0 is considered, you're in very good stable condition of the college. It looks at your net assets that you have, your operating reserves. It looks at a lot of different things. So the debt weighs on this in some aspects, but we've issued $60 million in COPS financing and almost $20 million in a revenue bond financing, and still with those large debt issues, we've been able to maintain the CFI of over 3.0.
And I think one of the things we've been working with our board on is, if you look carefully, and there's a lot of complexity to this composite financial index. You can have what looks like a very high index, but if you've got, difficulty with your assets, you haven't invested properly, that's not going to be reflected here, but it's a real issue. So I think one of the things that we've talked to our board about, and I've talked to you about a lot, is these ratios are absolutely dependent upon our reserve fund. So the higher reserve fund, the more additional debt we can take on as we need to, the higher the CFI is going to be. You're just in a much stronger position if, the easiest way to probably think about it for people like me who are not people like you and not accountants is your own personal financial situation. It's good to be in a position to be able to say, I can float several months if I were to have an issue with my revenue side. And so I think the higher we can get that fund reserve up to be able to continue to invest in ourselves is super important. But this is a great report that it's very difficult. They had to take on all these other responsibilities, but this is not a report that you want to be delayed on. They absolutely expect this to be done. And if it's not done or your CFI is not where it's supposed to be, then you have to answer some questions and you have the potential to be put on kind of an improvement plan to get where you're supposed to be. It's a positive thing that the HLC is trying to help us with. So appreciate you sharing that with us. Very complex. There's 4 ratios that make up that composite financial index. And I have in the past spoken to senators about this and kind of explained if they had questions about, well, why do you have to have a fund reserve? Well, a lot of the reasons, and you know this much better than I know, we're such a large entity that we need almost $20 million, more than $20 million, I believe, just to cash flow, because our revenues and our expenditures go out in different cycles. And that you're the expert in it, but you have to have that ability to cash flow. And that's one of the reasons why you have to have a significant fund reserve.
That's right.
Thank you, Amy. Anything else you want to add before we, you've been great, very informative. Appreciate that. Anything else?
No, I think I want to thank everybody.
Is that an SCC shirt that you have?
Yes, it is.
See, I've got mine on. Fantastic. Way to go, Amy.
If people have questions on the CARES Act, if they should be coding certain things or any of the coronavirus related issues, just give us a call. We'll assist you with those issues.
Perfect. Say bye to the college, Amy.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Wonderful video. Appreciate it. Everybody take care.